You got to completely encase yourself in this blanket to prevent the roaches from crawling all over you, climbing into your mouth, crawling in your ears, or whatever is exposed. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Bounce Back, Life After Prison. So one of you guys asked me, what was the dirtiest prison that I have ever been to? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down all the prisons that I went to, about 10 of them, and tell you on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the cleanest, 10 being the dirtiest, which one was the absolute most heinous, disgusting, filthy, mind-boggling, why is this thing even still open prison that I was housed at. That's going to be the last one on the list. So be sure to watch the entire video. Now with that, let's jump into it and chop it up. Number 1, as soon as I got to prison, I ended up at North Florida Reception Center. Lake Butler is what a lot of people know it as, the main unit. So this prison is pretty much a reception medical center. It's extremely old, and for the most part, it's in pretty decent repair, but it's old. So you got a lot of things that don't work properly. So one of the big things, these are all open bay dorms. There's one building that's not, actually two. There's a confinement building, and then there's another building right in the middle of the compound that's a 2-man cell building, but the rest of the entire compound is open bay. And the way their open bay dorms are built, all the housing area is surrounded by these glass louvered style windows, and a lot of the windows are broken out. So what happens is even if the windows aren't broken out, the windows do not shut all the way. In the wintertime, it gets down into the 30s in this area. So that's when I got there. I got off the bus during the winter, freezing cold, and where your bunk is, it slid up to the window. So your head is like right on the edge of the window. And I'm telling you right now, it is freezing in here. The heat doesn't work properly. So on a scale of 1 to 10 dirtiness, the dirtiest part of this compound, those open bay dorms, was the bathrooms. I mean, they pretty much work, but you would find a lot of mold. All the tile is extremely old. The grout is very old. The water, it has a lot of areas where it's standing. So it's just, even though they come in, like probably once a week, they come in and spray it down with some foam and scrub it, it's still pretty dirty. But on a scale of 1 to 5, I'd say it's about a 5, about midways as far as clean or dirty, because I've seen a lot worse, but I've seen a lot cleaner as well. From the main unit, I got transferred over to what they call the West unit at Lake Butler, the Wild Wild West. Now, the West unit is a lot newer than the main unit, but on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 to 10, it's going to be also about a 5. Even though it's much newer, the bathrooms are pretty much still in the same type of repair as the main unit. Slightly cleaner, but not enough to bump it up in the scale. And one of the reasons, while I was there, they turned me into a permanent, or made me a permanent while I was at the West unit, and I got assigned to work on the maintenance crew. So working on the maintenance crew, you really get to see a little bit more behind the scenes. And while I was there, one of the dorms, the bathroom roof was leaking, and it leaked down onto the ceiling inside of the dorm. And they let it just keep leaking and leaking and leaking until the entire ceiling in the bathroom actually caved in and covered the entire bathroom with sheetrock. It was crazy. I was like, dang, I can't believe that they let it go. A repair that needed to be done, they let go for so long that it caused the entire roof to cave in. That was pretty crazy. Now, from the West unit, my custody got dropped down, and they actually made me a minimum security custody. So they transferred me over to their work camp, Lake Butler work camp. They opened it in 2007. It was a brand new compound. Prisoners built it. As soon as they opened it, they transferred all the people from the West unit that was minimum security over to the work camp. So when we got here, this place was brand new. Everything was clean. Everything obviously worked properly. The bunks that we slept on, we were the first people to sleep on the bunk. Now look, we're talking about prison. We're not talking about Holiday Inn, no type of hotel. You know, you don't expect those type of living conditions that you have, you know, when you're dealing with like somewhere in the free world. But, you know, we're talking about some of the places are actually inhumane living conditions. You know, we're talking about prisons in America. We're not talking about a third world country where it's expected to be living in foul conditions. So here at this work camp, like I said, it was a brand new place. I remember our houseman, it was a guy named Eddie Carpenter. This dude was a fanatic about cleaning, to the point that everybody was like, man, this dude's got to be a Peter Gazer, because he stays in the bathroom scrubbing the toilet, scrubbing the sink, scrubbing the shower all day long. The man didn't hardly ever come out of the bathroom. But one thing for sure, you could go to the bathroom, you didn't have to worry about the sink being dirty. You did not have to worry about the toilet being dirty, the shower. It didn't. If anybody made a mess, this man was right behind him scrubbing and cleaning and wiping. It was drying things. That place was immaculate. But that was in 2007. So I'd imagine that by now it's worn down a little bit, and probably a little bit dirtier than it was at that time. Now, from the work camp, I actually escaped. Now, whenever I got caught for my escape, they sent me to FSP, Florida State Prison. This place is unlike anything else that I had ever seen. Extremely dirty, extremely old. When I first got there, they put me into a wing called Q Wing, or X Wing, as some people call it. It was the whole building is a one-man cell type of building. And when they put me into that cell, the only thing in this room was a concrete slab that was built on the edge of the wall. That's where you lay your mattress on. And then there was a sink toilet combo and a drain in the floor. For the most part, they would keep these cells pretty clean. They would come bring you a mop, like a short mop. They'd bring you a little short broom, so you'd be bent over sweeping the dust balls out. That's pretty much all that was in there, was dust balls. They'd bring you some chemicals to spray in the room to keep it clean. But that was the only wing at FSP that they kept clean like that. When I left Q Wing, or X Wing, I got transferred to another wing in the building that was a disciplinary wing. So the Q Wing was also disciplinary, but when I got done with that, that was called max management. There was actually 2 doors that you're locked in the cell behind. When I left there, I went down to another wing. I believe it was called B Wing. And this one was off the chain, crazy, dirty, filthy. It was wild. This was a disciplinary wing for a lot of psych patients. So as soon as you enter the wing, you hear nothing but screaming, banging, kicking. Oh, it was crazy. When you enter your cell, you're like, what happened in here? This place is disgusting. I mean, the toilet in your cell, you have no ability to flush it. And the reason they do that is because guys would go in the cell. You know, you're dealing with a lot of maniacs in this wing. Guys would go in here and just totally flood the cell out, cause shit, piss, everything to just flood out and go out into the hallway. So to prevent that from happening, they turned the flush button off. And the only way you could get your toilet flushed, didn't matter how much piss or crap you had in the toilet, the only way to get it flushed was when an officer came by, and you damn near had to beg them to flush your toilet. And you'd get lucky if they flushed it one time a day. So you're dealing with the smell of piss and crap in your toilet. And they do not bring cleaning supplies. They're not coming and letting you sweep out the room. They're not coming and letting you mop the room up. They're not bringing you anything to clean the toilet with. They're just not doing it. They're supposed to, but they don't do it. Then the other thing about that cell was it had a metal bunk mounted to the wall, and guys had jumped on the frame of the metal so much that it bent like a U shape into the bunk. So you got a little thin mat that you lay on your bunk, but when it's bent like a U shape, trust me, you're not getting much sleep. So they also in these cells had those louver style windows that were broken out. So now you're dealing with cold weather. You're dealing with this stench of the toilet. People have pissed on the floor. They crapped on the floor. You know, there's nothing, you can use your towel, but if you use your towel or your rag, that's going straight into the laundry and eventually coming back to you or somebody else. So I definitely didn't use my rag to wipe anything up. You can try to use a little bit of toilet paper, but you have to be sparingly with your toilet paper because they're not coming around giving you toilet paper on the frequently. So you got to be extremely generous with your toilet paper. On a scale of 1 to 10, I would say this was about an 8 overall at FSP. It would have been a 10 if they would have had like rodents, roaches, mice, any of that type of stuff. But while I was there, I never seen any of those. So that place was unlike anything else that I had ever seen, except for the bug part. Now, from there, once I finally got off of my confinement status after 2.5 years, they transferred me to a reception center called Central Florida, Orlando. And for the most part, Orlando was a pretty clean prison. Even the dormitories, the chow hall, most of that dorm compound was kept pretty clean. So, yeah, I don't really remember too much that was dirty about Orlando. So with that one, I would give it probably about a 4. 1 being the cleanest, 10 being the dirtiest. Now, when I left Orlando, they sent me down to South Florida Reception Center. This place is filthy. This place is absolutely disgusting. While I was there, they actually had an entire dorm that was condemned. Nobody could even live in it because it was so damn dirty. It was in disrepair. It needed some type of work done to it. But this place was just absolutely filthy. Like the rest of the places where I was at, where the officers stayed on top of making people clean up, made housemen clean up, made the yard guys inside grounds keep things clean. They weren't doing that. The officers were just sitting back trying to chill, collect their paycheck, and go to the house. So without any type of structure or people telling them, hey, clean this stuff, most of the guys were not going to clean. So South Florida, I would give them probably about a 9. Again, if they would have had bugs, roaches, things like that I would have seen in the living areas, then I would probably give them a 10. Now, from South Florida, I got transferred up to Hendry Correctional Institution. Now, Hendry Correctional Institution was another old one that prior to me coming here had actually been condemned before. I don't know exactly what it was condemned for, but while I was there, it's another one that's got these, it's actually just got one louver style window. Those windows don't work. You're dealing with the cold air here as well. The heat does not work. Extremely old buildings, but I didn't see any bugs. And you did have access to cleaning supplies, so you were able to clean your living area on your own. So you could get a mop, you could get a broom, you could get spray chemicals to spray the toilet down, spray the sink down. So overall, I would say it was about a 5, about a mid-ground as far as clean or dirty. But while I was at Hendry Correctional, they actually condemned that place once again, sent everybody out of there and, transferred people to different prisons. Now, people were speculating. They never told us exactly why they were closing it down. But from what I was hearing, the water was contaminated. Now, do I know that to be absolutely true? No. But that's what everybody was speculating, because the living conditions, we could have kept living in these buildings, even though it was cold and the heat didn't work. They weren't much worse than any of the other places that I went to. So I'm assuming, or going by what everybody was saying, that the water was tainted at that place. If that's the case, then they definitely get a 10. But I'm not positive on that. From there, I got transferred to Hardy Correctional Institution, which is in between like Orlando and Tampa. This, even though it wasn't new, was one of the cleanest, well-kept prisons that I had been to. I mean, the officers stayed on top of making sure things were clean, things were dusted, things were swept, things were wiped down, everything kept new paint on it. This place was kept extremely clean. So on a scale of 1 to 10, I would give it about a 2, being one of the cleanest ones that I had been to. That place was definitely kept immaculate. If it was brand new, then it would have got a 1 for sure. Now, from Hardy Correctional Institution, I got shipped to the Panhandle to a place called Taylor Correctional Institution. Taylor, semi-kept clean, but mainly the outside part. Once you left out of your dorm onto the grounds, that's where they pretty much kind of kept it clean. But once you got into your dorm, the officers really didn't come in there and enforce cleaning all that much. They would come around and do like a weekly inspection, and that was pretty much the only time that things needed to be kept up. But they weren't really that strict on it. Really, when they were coming around doing their inspections, They're really just searching for things, looking for contraband, cell phones or drugs. They really weren't checking the cleanliness part of it all that much. So on a scale of 1 to 10, at Taylor Correctional Institution, I would give them about a 7, as far as like 10 being the dirtiest. But from Taylor, I got transferred to another institution. I don't remember the name of this one, but this one was an extreme maximum security prison, and it was kept pretty clean. The dormitories were kept well clean. They made the housemen stay on their job. They kept the bathrooms really clean. Your living area had to be kept clean. The day room had to be kept clean. And the officers stayed on top of it. They had a lot of cameras on the compound. So there really wasn't no getting around keeping things clean at this place, because they pretty much enforced it. When they came around and did their weekly inspection, they were looking to make sure things were clean. And if they weren't, people were getting written up. People would go to confinement just for not doing their job properly at this prison. So now what I want to do is tell you about the absolute takes the cake, most filthy, disgusting, foul prison that I was ever at. It was actually a building that I was housed in at Lake Butler, North Florida, the first place that I got sent to. I actually went back through there another time on a transfer and got housed in a place that's called I Block. Now, I Block, this is like unlike anything I have ever seen. This place, it's one building right in the middle of the compound. It's a 2-man cell building that's built up off of the ground. I want to say it was built like back in the 40s, but I'm not 100% positive on that. But if it was built in the 40s, they should have condemned it in the 50s, 10 years after it was built. Now, once you go up these stairs, you come into like a day room area. Not really a day room where you watch TV, but just a common area where the officers sit at. And on each side of the building, you have like 4 wings. You have 2 that go this way, and then 2 above it. They go opposite ways as well. And down each wing, it's a long, long row. You have a bunch of 2-man cells. And like I said, it's extremely dark. It's always cold. It's always damp. It's constantly leaking. The plumbing is leaking. The roof is leaking. And then what's crazy is the officers, they always stay right up front. This place right here, it's not for the weak. It's not for the timid. It's not for the afraid. Because once you show that, not only are you dealing with this dirtiness, but you are dealing with wild, crazy. They send crazy people to this place, to I Block. So you're dealing with the living conditions that are foul, but you're also dealing with a bunch of foul, crazy prisoners. So what would happen is you would have one side with these jits, young juveniles that are on one side, and they were supposed to be kept separate from everybody else, but they would actually climb up the railing, come over the railing, and come around, and they would always try, they would come like in a little gang, a little clique, and actually go into people's cells and rob them. And, you know, it was so dark down here. The officers never came down here. They didn't know what was going on. So not only are the living conditions foul, but the people that you were around at this place were foul. Now, what was the worst part about it is, actually, let me get to the worst part in a second. The shower area. There was no lighting in the shower area. So you really couldn't see too much how clean it was, but you could tell that it was filthy inside this shower. That it was not, even though they would come and spray the foam down in here once a week, it was not clean. Just the smell of old stale water, because there was constantly water sitting around, was like, oh man, it's filthy in here. But then there was no lighting in there as well. So when you go to the shower, you're dealing with a bunch of maniacs around you. You can't really see too good while you're in this shower area. So you really got to be on guard. You really got to be on point. But when you try to shower and actually turn the water on, you hit the button, it only sprays for a few seconds, and it's cold water coming out of here. You know, it barely gets warm because you just hit one button. You don't have a button just for the hot. You hit one button and it's supposed to mix the cold and the hot to give you some warm water. I never felt any warm water while I was there. So you had to hurry up and hit the button, get wet real quick, hit the button again, rinse off. It was crazy. But the worst part about eye block were the roaches. I'm talking about cockroaches. Big, they had little roaches, but they had a ton of big palmetto cockroaches. These type will actually bite you. These things were foul. I mean, it was crazy. You could be in your cell and look out like to the outer wall right outside the bars, and it would look like the wall was just moving, especially at nighttime. It would look like the wall was moving, but it was just like a litter of cockroaches that are moving around on the wall. They weren't just outside the cell, they were in your cell. Listen, you couldn't leave any type of food in your cell. Once you open it, if you open a bag of chips, you got to eat all of them. Doesn't matter how big the bag of chips are. You got to eat them, because if you leave that bag in your room, an open bag, they're getting in that. Guys actually had food that they had not opened that things were eating into. People were always saying that it was mice. Now, I personally never seen any of the rodents, like the rats or mice or whatever it was that was chewing into these canteen items, but I seen where guys actually showed me bags of cantina soup, whatever it was that these rodents were chewing into, and it clearly was not the roaches that were chewing into it. So, you know what? I forgot about it. I had a pack of oatmeal, dried oatmeal in a bag that got chewed into, and then it had droppings, some type of like mice droppings in the damn oatmeal. I totally forgot about that. But what's worse is whenever you go to your cell, when they call lockdown, and you go lay down on your bunk, you have to take the blanket, the wool blanket they give you, and cover your entire body, head to toe. You got to create a cocoon, or it's like you're in a womb or something. You have to wrap it around your legs, your feet, your torso, your head. You got to completely encase yourself in this blanket to prevent the roaches from crawling all over you, climbing into your mouth, crawling in your ears, or whatever is exposed. You had to do that every single day, anytime you go lay down in your cell. I don't give a dang how much you try to clean your cell. It didn't matter. These roaches were everywhere in this building. All right, everybody, so that's it. That was the dirtiest place that I have ever been to out of all the places I went to doing my time in Florida. I Block at Lake Butler. Place is a madhouse, disgusting, filthy wreck. Should have been condemned a long time ago. Nobody should be living in that building. If you haven't already done it, hit the subscribe button. Turn on the bell so that you get notifications. Leave a comment. Let me know if you've done time. What were the conditions like where you done time at? Have you seen anything as dirty or even dirtier than what I described with eye block? Much love, appreciation, and respect to you all. Thank you for watching the video. And remember this, no matter what the heck you are going through or have been through, one thing that matters the most is that you believe in yourself. Never give up on you. Realize only you owe it to you to live your absolute best life. Bounce back from the BS and keep moving.